Hello, this is Charmaine Ironside, the Diet Dropout, and I am here today with Josephine, and she is an awesome woman. I met her at an event a few weeks ago, and I just knew that I wanted to bring her on for an interview because she's such a positive person. And lo and behold, I didn't know this until recently, but she is actually a positive psychology specialist. So she teaches people how to be happy from the inside out, and I'm just super excited to get some of her insight on happiness and positivity and what we can do to make our lives better.
Awesome. Thanks, Charmaine. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I guess I was looking on your website and, what is positivity? So I guess you said that it's the dominance of positive emotions. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than negative emotions.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually based on a lot of research that was done by a positive psychology researcher. Her name is Barbara Fredrickson. And so if you've heard of positive psychology, you've probably heard of Barbara. But she worked alongside with a mathematician. His last name was Lasada. And he came up with a ratio. And the ratio they found determined whether or not you felt positivity or not. So the ratio was 3-to-1. So you need to experience 3 positive emotions for every negative emotion that you feel to feel the benefits and feel like you're experiencing positivity, right?
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So it's a formula.
It's a formula. There's a little bit more of a science around it,
Awesome.
which some people don't know. So I really want to spread that awareness of what exactly positivity and happiness is and what it feels like and how you can get it.
Awesome. So when you're talking about positive emotions, I know for me, it's usually like a thought first, and then I kind of decide if I'm going to if it's a negative thought, if I'm going to believe it and I'm going to go down that road, or if I'm going to kind of cancel the thought and realize it's not serving me and make a better thought. Mm-hmm. So, what if you're just kind of innately a person that's just constantly barraged with negative thoughts? Do you have any tips for that?
Absolutely. Learned optimism can work really well. Basically, when you think something, you're interpreting the events or the circumstances in your life, right? Mm-hmm. So when you can learn to interpret the circumstances differently, in essence, change your thoughts, then you change the emotions around it. One of the things I ask myself almost always is, will this matter a year from now? Mm-hmm. Right? If what I'm thinking about, if what I'm giving attention to in my mind right now is going to matter, then I'm going to make a plan of action. And if it's not, I'm just going to drop it and not allow it to take space in my head.
And do you find, is that become a habit? Did that take a while for that to become a habit for you?
It is one of the 3 questions you can ask yourself when you're looking at optimism. But yeah, it did become a habit. And it started with my taking my diploma. And actually, that was one of the things that my instructor said she did. And then I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense because that'll help me just drop things. Like, why focus on something if I don't really need to?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things in life is we make up stories that end up hurting us. It's not even necessarily true, but we just kind of go down those rabbit holes. So that's a great question. So you said there was 2 other questions you can use for that optimism?
Yeah, you actually nailed the other one is is this true?
Okay.
What are the facts around this? So can I find out the truth about it, right? So what do I really know? What are the facts and what am I basing my thoughts on? And that can be really good even with if you've got kids. I know kids can think, oh, I really suck at math. Well, do you really suck at math or are you just having trouble with one element of math, right? So what's really true in this situation? Or even, with disease that can come up, what do you really know? Because, when you get diagnosed with a disease of any kind, you immediately go to the worst case scenario. But if you can just backtrack to the moment, to the present and say, what do I know right now? What is the truth? What are the facts? Then it keeps you present in the moment so that you don't ruminate and cause all these other different thoughts to go on, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other question to ask yourself is, how much did I have to do with this? Because a lot of the times the situation is out of your control, right? But if you can just stop and think, okay, I either had a lot to do with this, then you would ask yourself, what did I learn from that? And move forward that way. Or it was something completely out of your control. And then you just go, I didn't have anything to do with it. So I don't need to make myself that accountable or blame myself or feel shame or guilt because of the event.
Awesome. So there's 3, those are the 3 ones. And how do you decide which question to ask, or do you go through all 3?
Well, okay, you can actually go onto a website. There's a really cool website that was developed by the founder of positive psychology. His name is Martin Seligman. And he has a website through Pennsylvania University. It's called AuthenticHappiness.org.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, AuthenticHappiness.org. He has a slew of surveys and questionnaires based on positive psychology that you can go and create an account and take these surveys. And so he has a survey on optimism, because these 3 questions we're talking about are all about interpreting life through an optimistic lens, right? So you can go there and actually take the optimistic survey, and it'll break down for you what your score is in those 3 areas. So then if your score is lower in one area, like for me, it was thinking that everything was a big mountain, right? So that's why for me, I asked myself that question, will this matter a year from now? So it just helped me differentiate between what was a big issue and what was a small issue. And if it was a small issue, to just let it go. So yeah, if you get your score on each of those 3 areas, it will really help you determine, what area you might want to work on first.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
so,
it is pretty
so
cool.
One question might be more powerful for certain people than others.
Yes.
That's great. Yeah, I just read recently a quote said, once we change the way we look at things, the way things we look at change. So it's so much about our perspective and how we're deciding. I like the glass. Are you a person that sees the glass half empty, glass half full?
Yeah.
I would like to think I've always been an optimist.
Yeah.
But I still struggle with scarcity thoughts and fear and guilt. And so I try to stop the thoughts, but sometimes I think maybe a question might be really helpful. So that's awesome.
Well, if you ask yourself questions, it's just looking at yourself or your life through a lens of curiosity. And positive psychologists have found that curiosity really helps to dial down any type of worry that could lead to stress, that could lead to anxiety, right? So we all know the way that route goes, and we don't necessarily want to go there, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So something else I thought was interesting that you said when we chatted before was the idea of trying to just be happy all the time. And it's like, it's not really authentic. Like I sort of believe, maybe you'll debunk this, but like the idea of fake it till you make it. Like it's like, I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm going to think about where I want to be. I'm going to visualize it. I'm going to act as if I'm going to get that. And sometimes that works really great. And sometimes I just want to be a downer and be sad or whatever it is. So yeah, could you just speak to kind of how it's unnecessary, maybe it's unrealistic to always try to be happy?
Well, I think that when you look at successful, happy people, they've all gone through hard life circumstances. And they didn't have a Pollyanna smile on their face through the whole process. So I really, truly believe that happiness is a journey, and that you can't just remain completely positive and always feeling a happy, positive emotion at every moment of every day. I look at life a little bit like the ocean waves that come, and that it's not about being on top of the wave all the time, but you have to learn to surf, to get under the wave sometimes, so that you can reach that moment where you can catch that wave and bring it home. So when you talked a little bit about positive affirmations and thinking positive thoughts, when the positive thoughts that you're thinking, when you believe them, they do translate into action. So you definitely will find that if you believe something, it can help you experience a positive emotion and can obviously help you become happier. It's when you don't believe it that it doesn't materialize into anything, because it's actually not changing any neurological pathways in your brain. And that's why positive self-affirmations can work, but they don't always work in the long term, because it really depends on, is that thought being transformed into an emotion, and is that emotion leading you into an action? And as long as there's an action, then yes, you always will get through what you need to get through and come out on the happier side of things. Does that make sense?
It's
does. A little bit, yeah.
I know, I know Tony Robbins talks about you have to be like feeling the affirmation, or else it's almost useless.
Yeah.
But what do you mean about the action?
Well, then you have to do something. Because if you feel something, that's great. But if you don't let it lead to action, then what change will it actually make in your life?
Do you have an example?
So, yeah. Okay. Actually, funny enough, you were saying fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
So there's another researcher. Her name is called Amy Cuddy. Have you heard of her before?
Yes, I've seen her TED Talk.
Yeah, and she has the awesome TED Talk, right? And she talks about the Wonder Woman pose, right? And so they really, either Superman or Wonder Woman, and the changes that the positioning that your physical body can take to change the pathways going, not the pathways, but I guess it changes the connections in your brain is really what it's doing. So that particular position she has shown reduces your cortisol, right? So then it automatically reduces your stress and it increases your testosterone. So for women, it can increase your confidence. So if I'm ever going into some place where I'm feeling a little low on my self-worth or my self-confidence, I'll actually do that pose before an interview or before I'm facilitating a workshop. And sometimes even before I'm going into a coaching session, just to help myself feel more confident. So yes, I am faking it till I make it in that circumstance because I'm not feeling something, but I'm doing, the action is the stance in front of the mirror to cultivate that emotion so that it's changing how I'm feeling. And then it ripples into what does it produce, right? It produces me at my best so they can help other people be at their best.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. So I know you have some different topics that you speak on, and I love the idea of having meaning in your life leading to more positivity. And I think I've been quite blessed that I always sort of had a purpose and I felt fulfilled. In retrospect, looking back, some of the things I did, I think I did them for the wrong reasons. But I always had like a passion and a purpose, and I felt like I had meaning, which made it easier, I think, to stay positive. So do you have any tips for people that kind of don't feel like they've found their meaning in life or their purpose?
Oh, yeah. Finding meaning and purpose is actually like the roots underneath all of this. It's what I'm so passionate about. I would say, to be honest, when you're going to find meaning in your life, it's actually going to come from you discovering more about who you are. That's really the foundation. When you discover who you are and then you focus on what you're great at, you will naturally come to a place where you find that passion and that purpose, and that's what drives the meaning, right? So a lot of times in life we get caught up in what we do, and it's becoming less and less in this generation. But if I look at my father, for example, he defined himself so much by what he did as his profession. And that's why nowadays you see people coming to old age and retirement, and their meaning and purpose just plummets in life. And it's because they attach so much of what they did to define them. So our generation is really focused on what are my strengths? What am I really good at? Who am I as a person? And then figuring out what am I going to do based on who I am. And that's where the true meaning and purpose comes. We've kind of just been going about it the flip side.
Right.
Yeah.
So for someone even like your dad, is he retired now?
He's semi-retired, yeah.
So do you have any tips for him?
Yeah, we're always focusing on him doing stuff that he loves, right? Like having leisure activities and hobbies. And yeah, I'm kind of like a mom to him now, even though I'm his daughter, but
keeping him positive.
Yeah, right. Just trying to keep him engaged in his life instead of feeling like he's got nothing to live for. Because so often that can happen when your job's gone, right? I think about how much time and energy we put into our jobs. But there's always another job or another career or another calling. And it really stems from who are you in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then another topic that I find really interesting is forgiveness. And I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with.
It is.
I think I've kind of realized, because I heard the message so much, like your resentments towards others only hurt you.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've realized is you don't have to necessarily, just forgiving someone doesn't make it mean that what they did was okay.
Exactly.
But it's releasing yourself.
Yes.
From the bonds of that anger and I'm still working on that with a few relationships, but do you have any kind of insight on forgiveness and how people can start to move towards that?
Yeah, that was an interesting experiment that we actually, well, not experiment, but it was an activity we worked on when we were in our course.
Yeah.
The first forgiveness letter, which is a really good activity to try, just writing a letter, was actually to myself. I wrote a letter of forgiveness to myself for being so hard on myself as a mom. And because I was so hard on myself, I could never just be a great mom and like not have guilt and shame around what I did or didn't do all the time, right? Yeah. And so that was really beneficial to start by just writing a forgiveness letter and then reading it to the person. Yeah. It's when you read, it's even like gratitude too. If you are thankful for something and then you also know why you're thankful for it, it just propels that gratitude emotion to its full benefit. And same with forgiveness. You can forgive someone, but to express that forgiveness to someone really allows the benefits of forgiveness to be opened up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I actually took a grief course, and we wrote letters that they forgave the person, but they also thanked the person for the positive things. Yeah. And the instruction was actually you would read it, but you wouldn't read it to them. And it would be so powerful. But I think you're so right. Like reading it out loud and like really feeling it is what's going to help you get through the emotion. If you just write it and burn it. Oh, I think we're good now.
Okay, we're back.
Yeah. So just writing it's not that powerful. Would you agree?
It's powerful, but it's even more powerful. And if the person isn't there to read it to, or you cannot read it to that person, read it to somebody else. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be that person always. That's interesting you bring up the grief, because I'm just helping my kids through grief from our move, because we moved from a town into the city of Calgary last year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so there's a whole lot of that grief in the completeness of letting go of those relationships, right? So very powerful.
Yeah, it's a deep topic.
I know.
Yeah, one thing I kind of realized was if I wasn't willing to express my emotions, whether it was to forgive people or to feel sad or to feel angry, I was like bottling it all inside. And big part of that was the way I coped with that was I ate and got very overweight. But another thing was just like I didn't have a joy for life. I didn't have a zest for life. And I think you kind of touched on it before we had it jumped on the interview. But if you don't let yourself feel the crappy emotions or the hard emotions, you don't have access to the happiest emotions.
Oh, exactly.
Is there like a science behind that, or can you speak about that a bit more?
I do a whole course just on emotion recognition and emotion management, because it is so powerful. And that falls in the realm of emotional intelligence, which has become quite in the forefront and in a very amazing, fascinating topic in the work world and in all facets. But so what I have found happens is that we tend to label emotions as good emotions and bad emotions. But really the reality is all emotions can be beneficial.
Right. Okay.
If we use them in a positive way. So for example, anger is usually caused by injustice. So it's something's happened, you have gotten angry inside about it. So you can react in cold, hot anger towards that anger and have an outburst, and that's not really going to produce anything in a positive way. Or you can take that anger and start to ask yourself those questions, right? Is this going to matter 12 months from now? Well, yeah, if you decide that circumstance does matter, then what can you do about it? And then you can react to the anger in a positive way by making a plan to have a conversation with the person who angered you, or do something like if it's about government or policy or systems or education or whatever it is, you can take positive action steps towards making the change, right? Especially if it's something that's unjust or that you don't believe is fair. You can take positive action towards making a difference as opposed to just sitting there in anger and complaining. Yeah. So it is taking that high energy negative emotion and going, okay, I can take this down to more of a neutral emotion and decide what kind of plan I'm going to put in place, then put that plan in place. And then you can feel a positive emotion generally, especially if you're doing something where you're going to be helping somebody. You're going to see a positive benefit from you converting that anger to a more positive emotional state, like, action or gratitude, right? And it all comes back to, even the forgiveness part, it all comes back to what story are we creating? How are we interpreting the events, the circumstances, the conversations that happen in our daily life? If we're going to interpret them through an optimistic lens, then more positive emotion will come from that. And if we're going to interpret it from a pessimistic lens, then more negative emotion will come from that. But you do have to feel it. And to feel it starts with recognizing it and not believing that it's bad. Because as soon as you believe that anger is bad, like especially look at kids, right? We say, you're bad. But actually, you're not being bad. You're just doing something that isn't acceptable. And it's because you're feeling an emotion, which is completely acceptable. It's very natural. If no one ever felt anger, then no one would ever take any action steps to help some of the injustices in the world, right? I mean, do you think, I think about Martin Luther's, I have a dream speech from the 60s, right? I'm sure he was pretty angered by the injustice to the Black community. And if he chose to do something about it in a very positive way.
Right.
So I just look at that. If he wouldn't have listened to his emotion of anger, it wouldn't have led to that speech.
Yeah. So in terms of I do a course about emotional eating and teaching tips for how to feel emotions. And that seems like a really hard thing for a lot of people. So I know you said awareness, which I 100% agree with. It's just notice. Some people don't even really notice. They just go through life on autopilot, right? So
right, yeah.
Step one would be awareness.
Yeah.
And then I like what you said about not labeling good or bad.
Yeah.
And then what was the other?
Well, then it turns into how do I manage that emotion? So, you can learn different little things. Like, for example, we talked about the Wonder Woman pose that Amy Cuddy did research on. Well, that pose would actually change an emotional state, right? If you were feeling unconfident and you wanted to feel positive confidence, then you would do that pose to change the emotional energy. So things like meditation can obviously help with high energy, negative emotions. But it really just depends where that emotion falls in the spectrum of high energy or low energy, and then negative or positive. And depending on what section it's in, you would have a different management strategy to help cope with it. But there's actually meditation you can do that just throughout the meditation, you just stop and you either think about, am I feeling something, or am I feeling a thought, or an emotion? And then if you're feeling an emotion, then you just try to label it, oh, I'm feeling confused. But then you just let it be. You actually just don't do anything about it at all. So, because there is a little bit of that too, where we try to not feel or feel things all the time instead of just letting them be. Because sometimes we don't need to do anything.
Yeah, sometimes we probably overthink it.
We overthink it. We're ruminators, right? So it is one of the concepts that I use to help describe that is the concept of a chessboard, the analogy of a chessboard. And that, it's constantly this battle of, no, I want my piece to get to the other side. I want to have a positive emotion. And then there's that negative emotion that says, no, you're not going to get over there. And there's constantly this battle between a positive emotion and a negative emotion. And if you're not going to be the pieces on the board, then the only other piece you can be is the chessboard. And sometimes it's beneficial to just watch the emotions and not experience being in the emotions, because they don't always need to be reacted to. Like, we get emotional energy into our brains all the time, right? Anything that happens with our five senses comes into our brain, and it is transferred into our brains and becomes an emotion. So, right, we don't really need to change or give attention to all of them. Sometimes we just need to let them be emotions.
Right. So for someone, let's say, that kind of jumps to anger really quickly, would you say the best thing they could do would be to meditate? I know that's helped me.
Yep. Meditation has proven to be one of the most beneficial tools to anxiety, to depression, to physical health, mental health, sleep deprivation. If you need more sleep, you learn to meditate. It's an amazing tool.
And what do you say to people that just say I can't meditate, it's so woo-woo, and they just kind of push it off?
Oh, I know.
That's my biggest thing I hear. I can't meditate, or they're just not sold on it. They're like, it sounds like it's for a monk in India. It's not my thing.
Well, I think meditation and mindfulness can really be combined. So the first thing is, if somebody says to me, I can't meditate, the fact that they even think they can't means that they're actually trying to meditate. So usually the first couple times you meditate, you completely get distracted. And because you're getting distracted, you think you're not meditating. But the fact that you notice you're getting distracted means that you are meditating. Right. So it's right. It's just that that's the beginning of it. And you get distracted way more often in the beginning. Right. Yeah. And then for somebody who says meditation isn't for me, then they can find mindfulness in another way. Right. Okay. So maybe it's cycling, maybe they're a runner, and maybe they just focus on a repetitive motion that they do. Maybe, fly fishing is another one that came to mind when I was doing my course, the last course. There was this gentleman there. He's a fisher. He loves to fly fish. And I thought that is just a great meditative exercise, right? Because you're just constantly working on the flow of the physical movement, right? Mm. So, even when I run sometimes, I get into the motion and I just go, okay, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. And that is mindfulness, right? It's just training your brain to focus on something, whether it's your breathing, the physical movements of your body, the ripples you hear in the river, whatever it is, it's just training your brain to focus on something. Even the birds chirping, if you want to sit outside for 10 minutes and only focus on birds chirping, it's still meditation.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I think it doesn't have to be, there's so many ways to meditate, that's for sure. Yeah. And I know for me, just the stress relief and not being so reactive with my daughter.
Oh, yes.
I remember going through periods where I would meditate every morning for like a couple weeks and I would stop. And now it's just a habit. It's like, I know if I don't, my day is going to be chaos. Yeah. So it's not even an option not to anymore. But it took me a long time to get there. And I think that's what people need to realize too, is it's like any habit. It's going to take a while to make it something that you like to do. But I always think if you say you can't meditate, you need it. Like the people that have the most trouble with it need it the most.
Yeah, that's usually the case. Yeah. I mean, we can all benefit from meditation for sure. Yeah. And the awareness around meditation is starting to change and it is becoming more accepted, which is I'm just so excited about that because there's so many benefits that come from it. And the one recommendation I give people is just be compassionate to yourself, right? Don't feel guilty if you can't do it one day, or if you only have 5 minutes one day and not the 20 that you'd like to give it, or you did it for 3 weeks or 3 months and then you've been off your bandwagon for a bit. Just love yourself through it. Be compassionate, give yourself a hug, and just start again. And the one cool thing about the research that they've done on meditation is that the benefits from meditation last quite a long time. So you would still experience the benefits of meditation even if you stopped for a week or two. Right. Yeah. That's so neat. You can just come back to it. Yeah, it's awesome.
That's great. Yeah, I think especially as women, we're so hard on ourselves and critical, and it's like striving for progress, not perfection, is always what I try to encourage people to do. Yeah. Well, I'll just ask you a couple last questions. Sure. I know we talked a little bit about labeling, and I guess my mind goes to like, I hear women say really cruel things to their body, or they'll say things like, I just can't lose weight, or, I have no willpower. And it's like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, if you say you have no willpower, then your life is just going to come out like that. Yep. If you say, I am making positive change and I am, so I know specifically, it's a kind of a near and dear topic to my heart is depression, because my sister struggles with depression. And I mean, I maybe even do too sometimes. Like I have a really hard time pulling myself out of a funk sometimes. But I agree that if I say I'm depressed and I'm like, I'm depressed, then everything around me kind of just mirrors that. And there's every reason to be depressed. Yes. But if I don't label it, anyways, I know for my sister, it's a neurochemical imbalance, but I still do believe that maybe losing the label and focusing on what you want. And so do you have any kind of insight about labeling yourself?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things that came up when I was taking my course. The first thing was called the Pygmalion effect. And that was studied, in the 60s. And they got away with a study that we wouldn't be able to get away with anymore. But in the classroom, they had the teacher tell all the brown-eyed kids that they were stupid and all the blue-eyed kids that they were smart. And by the end of the year, you know what happened, right? Yeah. All right. All the blue-eyed kids thought they were smart and got good grades. And all the brown-eyed kids thought they were dumb and didn't get good grades. So we couldn't get away with a study like that. now. But the reality is what you expect and what you think about comes about. There's actually been studies on it. It's not just that we say what we think about, becomes a reality. It's really true. And the other thing it makes me think about is when we were also in our course, we talked about the labels, right? How we define things that can become blockers instead of enablers. So, for example, like if you get a cold, do you go around saying that you suffer from colds?
No.
You either have a cold or you don't have a cold, right?
Yeah.
So positive psychology looks at things like depression the same way. And we might ruffle some feathers in the process, but you know what? If you experience depression, which is very normal and natural, and some people experience it in longer phases than others or more often than others, that's the reality of it. But we can't keep going around saying I suffer from depression, because then we're just creating that reality that we're living in. Like if we don't do it with the cold, then why do we do it with things like depression or cancer, even for that matter? Like depending on your doctor, you could have a doctor so you get your diagnosis, they say you have cancer, you go through the surgeries, the treatment, the cancer is gone, but instead of the doctor saying you're cancer free, some doctors will still say your cancer's in remission. And then you just live there thinking, well, when's the cancer coming back? Instead of, I am cancer free. So it just, how do we define things, and how do we allow that to place limitations on our life?
Right. Yeah, and I do believe, like on a cellular level, your body and the cells in your body do hear the messages you're constantly saying. So, it sounds a little woo-woo, I know, to some people, but I hugely believe that, like, thoughts become things, and I 100% believe that, and I know there's science to back that up. And
there is, absolutely, there is.
Yeah, cool.
Your thoughts become emotions, and your brain literally has receptors inside it that grab onto those the molecules of emotion, and they travel down your brainstem and go into your body. So the science now around neuroscience is showing that they will find molecules of emotion in different parts of your body that are attached to different diseases.
Wow.
Yep. So
it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So they say stress being a number one killer. Stress is an emotion.
Yeah. And like, I saw an interview recently that talked about also how you perceive stress. If you're like, this stress is killing me, then the stress is killing you. But if you say this is a positive stress, I'm going to get through it, this is just a challenge. It's a big part of your mindset, how you're perceiving the stress. So I know with my daughter, when she's crying, I'm like, okay, like she's fine, like we can get through this, instead of being like, this crying is killing me,
Yes,
because
exactly.
I don't want that to become something.
That's so true.
Yeah. Okay, well, if you don't mind just leaving us with kind of your top 3 tips that come to mind for someone just to have a better, a more positive outlook on life and be happier overall.
3 tips. Okay. 3 tips. I'm going to have to narrow it down to 3.
Yeah, or go. Give me 5.
No, I can do 3. I'd say the first one is to be present. Right? Find stillness so that you can rest and be present in a moment. Because the moment in front of you is the only moment that you have. So you don't need to live in the past, and you don't need to live in the future. You can still plan for the future because that gives you hope, but really allow yourself to be in the present moment. The second thing I would say is that the activities, the habits that you can do that will help you feel happy, you need to do them when you feel like it and when you don't feel like it. Because it's really doing it when you don't feel like it that's going to push you through so that you feel positive again. So that's another big one.
And what if you're really in the dumps and you feel like you have no access to that motivation? Is that just
it's not motivation. It's really just creating a plan and just literally doing it. Like there are days where I don't feel like making my bed, but I just do it anyways. There are days I don't feel like working out, but I just do it anyways. There are days that I don't feel like getting back to somebody in an email or even showing up for a coaching session, but it's not about me, right? It's about my purpose and it's about other people. So I just do it anyways. Like sometimes you could wake up in the morning and go, oh, I get to be a mom today, right? Or you can get up in the morning and go, I get to be a mom today. The choice is up to you. I don't think it requires motivation. It requires choice.
I like that. So obviously making things into a habit I believe, kind of pick one or two things at a time to work on and make them a habit, and then tackle another, because I think some people try to do it all at once and then get kind of paralyzed.
Yes, one thing at a time. To start transforming my life, I did two things, but one was very small. I started meditating. That was the first thing that I did. And the second thing I did was I started smiling at myself in the mirror.
Love it.
And that was a really simple one that I could do. That just, when you smile, it releases positive endorphins. You need those, right? So it's important to smile at yourself. And the third tip is to use your strengths. And to use them, you need to find out what they are. So spend some time, there are online tools that are free. There are people that do strengths coaching. I'm actually getting accredited in a really unique tool called the Strengths Profile. And it's an awesome system that measures the energy and the use of the strength as well as performance. So it really helps you clarify what brings you energy that you're good at. And sometimes you can overuse things you're good at and get de-energized by them. So it really helps you balance out what to do and when to do it, so that you're constantly feeling uplifted with your energy instead of bogged down by it.
Awesome. That's great. And then I guess I should have done this at the start, but would you mind just sharing a little bit about your story, how you kind of got into positive psychology, and maybe what your life was like before you started meditating and smiling at yourself and learning about this?
I would love to. I just wrote an email to somebody about this today, actually.
Oh, great.
For the longest time, I actually felt like I didn't have a story to tell. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I really think that no matter how drastic or depressed your story is or how happy your story is, it's still a story, right? So I actually was in direct sales for 5.5 years, and I loved what I did. And I sold jewelry, and it wasn't the jewelry that I loved. It was actually seeing the transformation inside somebody, right? When they put jewelry on, that they would feel beautiful, and it was really empowering. So that was kind of the first seed. And then as I grew a team within the direct sales industry, it was really awesome to watch women come on my team. And then I was really a vessel for them to achieve their goals and their dreams. So I realized that my motivation wasn't just about, selling something pretty. It was about helping people become the best that they could be. And then the company went under. So that was 3 years ago. And when they went under, and I had big hopes and dreams, I wanted to do some cool traveling with my family. And, the money is good in direct sales, but of course you have no control over whether the company stays in business or not. So they shut their doors, and it came as a surprise. And I got some life coaching after that and decided that I needed to kind of create my own job. So it was through that life coaching that I was able to figure out what would I want to do. And I really wanted to, facilitate and inspire people to help them be the best people that they could be. So we just searched, myself and my coach, we just searched up, what could help, what would be a good course, where would I go? And that's how we found the positive psychology diploma of well-being. And it's through a college in Australia called the Langley Group. And at that point, they had come to Canada to do the first week of it is all in person, and then the rest of the year you just do online learning to learn the rest of it. And it was really after that first week of the face-to-face portion that I did in Vancouver that gave me the tools that I needed to start making changes. And in regards to how I was as a mom, the best way I can describe it is that I was constantly living in this state of anxiety and irritation, frustration, kind of in that realm of emotions. And I was hard on myself for sure, but I just felt like I never had a relationship with my kids because I was always yelling at them because their toys weren't put away, or they didn't help out enough, or they didn't do their chores, or their homework wasn't done. And I was constantly living in this negativity bias. I always saw what was wrong, and I never saw what was right. And as a result of that, I was always feeling either irritated or frustrated or angry. And the meditation just started to change that. And when I first started doing it, it was like I would notice we would be doing something as a family and things would kind of go the wrong direction, if you will, because I needed things to be perfect to be happy. They were very rarely perfect, so I was very rarely happy. But then I would notice when I was starting to kind of get worried or in a slight panic about something, and then my husband kind of knew. So I'd be like, okay, I need a 10-minute or 15-minute timeout. And I would literally give myself a timeout, and I would go in my office and I would just meditate. So I meditated not at the same time every day, all the time, like as a habit. It was like, I did it every morning. And then if I needed to at other times in the day, I took that time. On the weekends, especially, I took that time because there was more, like, the kids were around more and there was more. I only have 2 kids, but for me, that was enough craziness. I felt crazy at the time. But now nothing's really changed. They're the same kids, but I'm a different mom. So I'm not as, I'm more calm around the same circumstances, and the mess doesn't bug me anymore. And now I've also realized that does the mess really matter? Like, it helped me reprioritize my life. And now I have a relationship with my kids. And the one thing is that because I started talking about my emotions and how I was feeling, and like I would cry more often and just tell them how I was feeling and work it out, like not cry and complain about it, but cry, this is how I'm feeling. What can I do about it? Right. Trying to work towards positive progress and solutions. Right. And now they're starting to talk about how they feel about things. And for the first, this is 2 years now, 2 years and a little bit. The first year, my oldest son would not talk about his emotions. If I started to try to talk to him about his emotions, he'd say, "Mom, I'm not talking about this with you."
Wow.
He would just shut me right down.
Yeah.
And now he talks to me about how he's feeling. And it's changed our life.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because I want to be a mom. Like, I'm a mom before I'm anything else. And to be able to have a relationship with my kids is what matters.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very inspiring. Yeah, I love you say, a lot of people say they don't have a story, but you don't have to like hit rock bottom necessarily to have a story. And I love that. I think that's such great advice for anyone watching. Just kind of knowing that you get to choose, your emotions in the moment. And I love that you don't feel guilty for saying to your husband, I need a 10-minute timeout. Like, I'm the same, and I still do feel a little bit weird being like, I need 15 minutes, and I feel selfish and like still a little icky about it because, we're just, trained, I think, to be strong and to push through. But I think the people that push through end up sick or really resentful, or, I don't think that's a really positive way to go through life. And so, I love your story. I think that's a great tool for any mom, but really anything in life, the mess or the craziness or the chaos is not going to stop. It's just our perception of it has to change if we want to have freedom and peace and calm. So I love that. I think it's a harder concept said than done. Like, just like you said, it took a couple of years for your son to start sharing his emotion. Maybe took, for me, it's taken a couple of years to really, slow down and like smell the roses. And now that I love that. But so I think be gentle on ourselves, and those 3, you said, I just want to sum up your 3 tips. So be present in the moment, which is amazing. And there's a quote that says, this moment matters, for this moment is your life. And that's like my mantra, because I'll be like with my daughter, but I'll be thinking about what I need to clean or do or email. And it's like, this is so stupid. I'm robbing myself of this beautiful moment, which is robbing me of happiness, because it's not fun to be in the past or the present. Well, no, that's right. Unless you're planning, and I like planning and stuff like that, but there's a time and a place.
Well, and even if you get distracted, it's okay. Just bring yourself back.
Yeah.
Right? That's all that matters, is that you just bring yourself back. You're like, oh, I'll do that later. Right? I'm with my daughter right now.
Yeah, and having a notebook helps me, or putting a note in my phone. And then you said habits, and just doing them even when you don't feel like it. That's so powerful, because it's like easy enough to like, do your gratitude journaling when you're on top of the world.
Sure, it is.
When you're in the dumps, you just kind of want to, shrivel up and not do anything productive. So I love that. And I think that takes a little bit of willpower, but it's also a muscle. Like,
it's a choice.
It's a choice. Yeah. And then you said your third one was
know your strengths. Know your strengths and use them.
Use your strengths and know your strengths, which is cool. And I think there's lots of, like you said, that resource that you do coaching with. And I think even just sitting down and saying, what do I love? What am I good at? You know, what lights my fire, and taking that time for yourself. So, wow, I feel like we could talk all day, but that was awesome. And I think
awesome topics.
You gave us a lot to think about. I'd love to do this again with some more questions and stuff like that. But to keep it not too long, we'll leave it there. And I know you have a great website. You have some programs within the city of Calgary. You know, people that don't live in Calgary that are watching this cannot still check out your stuff. And I know you do some online coaching, right?
Yeah, I definitely do. Yeah. Telephone coaching, Zoom coaching, and one-on-one in person too. So cool. Yeah, as long as you make a connection with the person that's coaching you, I think it's all that matters, right?
Yeah.
I have a coach in Australia, so
yeah, awesome.
And we have an amazing connection. So yeah.
So positivity-center.com, and I'll also post that with the video. And thank you so much, Josephine.
Oh, thanks, Charmaine. It's been a pleasure. You've got me so pumped up for the rest of my day,
Woo!
rest of my week, rest of my
me
month.
too. I got lots to think about.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much.